Talk about? What do you want to talk about?
I could tell on the Ryan Madge's podcast, you're talking about the Hungarian dialect and all that kind of thing.
I don't know. It's classic. And then he's asking me about parenting. And I'm like, okay, I'm a parent. I'm not a parenting expert. It's completely different.
I find a lot of podcasts I do with parents end up moving on to parenting. It's a pretty full-on part of your life, I suppose.
It's the crucible. It's where you learn everything.
Yes, you're totally right. You're totally right. Well, we're actually live, so that's fantastic. So I'll give us a quick little intro, and then we can just dive into it. Although we are already
We're in.
we're in. So welcome back to the Coaches to the Moon podcast today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sitting here with Adam Stanecki. He's a men's coach from Sunshine Coast up in Queensland, up in Sticky Noosa right now. He's the host of the Wholehearted podcast, and he's using a whole bunch of different techniques out there, from NLP, hypnotherapy, Chinese traditional medicine, just to really help men be all that they can be. Adam, thanks for being here, bro.
Thanks, Alex. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So we'll apologize to everyone. Neither of us have our microphones working today. We are both working. No, mine says it is, but it isn't. We're both regular podcast hosts with all the gear and no idea, but we're going to go ahead and just do our absolute best to give you a good conversation today. So, Adam, hopefully that intro covered most of it. You're a men's coach. You got a whole bunch of different practices and certifications, and you're just really helping a bunch of dudes to be better in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, pretty much. The men's coaching is almost by accident, right? Like, I've done business coaching before. I used to own a gym, so I coached in a gym, and then it's just kind of happened by accident. And it's one of those things where I started hearing this idea of lived experience for a while. And I'm like, well, what have I lived? I've lived being a man for 45 years, so maybe I can share some stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, it just came out of that. I mean, the majority of the work I do, I now call healing sessions. So I came out of NLP coaching and hypnosis, but using the word hypnosis freaks people out a bit. They think maybe it's all about no longer being scared of spiders and quitting smoking, but it's so much more than that. And most good coaching uses hypnosis without even knowing about it. And it's amazing. When I see good coaches, I'm like, you've used some hypnotic stuff there, and you may or may not know that you've done it. So the healing work for me is where it starts. And then if I find men within that healing, which is for both genders, the healing, if I find men in there, then that's the doorway into coaching for me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that healing thing that you do, because a question I've had to ask a lot of people this year relates well to you. You're a guy who runs a lot of face-to-face events and retreats to facilitate your healing. I know that you do everything from fire circles and cacao ceremonies and a whole bunch of that stuff that really needs that personal connection to be there. Yeah. And so, as with live events being a big part of your business model, how have you had to pivot and divert your practices over the last 18 months?
Oh man, spinning plates. It's just been spinning plates. So the live events are just coming back in, as you know, in terms of something that can actually generate leads and income. They're only just coming back. We have up until recently been very blessed in Queensland with really low numbers in terms of COVID cases, but that's like the horse is bolted now, so I don't even know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
But for the last couple of years, paid events weren't part of what I did.
Sure.
So yeah, it was just sort of one-on-one therapeutic context and a little bit of coaching here and there, and then online stuff, and like really working digital content and putting things out. So last year I started a podcast, and which, and as we're doing this right now. We do this once and it sits there and people can find it later on. So it keeps paying for itself.
Totally. Yeah. It is the gift that keeps on giving, podcasts. And I'm finding there's a community, there's a circle of coaches out there. Everyone's talking on each other's podcasts. Every conversation brings something new. Yeah. And I think what we all need to try and do is just try and expand the questioning a little bit. I think everyone goes through the same questions. Here's my story, and here's how I got into it. Do a bit of research on your guests, I reckon, and ask a few extra additional questions. Then give them a good time.
Sometimes I do the complete opposite and do no research, and I have a conversation as if I've met someone in a cafe and just started chatting.
Great. Love it.
And they're the best conversations, right? Like, we don't know anything about each other. You've looked up a couple of things about me, but we don't really, the words might not explain me at all. So now we get to meet each other live, right? It's great.
Yeah. I know where your sister lives. I know your sister lives quite close to me.
Yeah. Don't hold that against her. She's good people.
Well, she's got good taste, man. I used to live in the same suburb, and it's a great beachy suburb. There's a lot of bars. You can walk everywhere. There's too many bars,
Yeah.
And it's a very, very dangerous place to live in terms of how many places there are within walking distance to get absurdly on it. So yeah, man, I lived there with when we were first engaged, the first time my now wife and I moved out together. We lived in Newport, where your sister lives. I at the time was a broke as a joke coach. I sold my car. I had a skateboard. I skateboarded everywhere, and that was the place to do it.
That's perfect, man.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. So were you online much before you had to go online?
Well, I've got it back. What I did in the 90s with university was a Bachelor of Computing.
Okay.
And so I was coding websites when it was literally coding websites.
Wow.
So I've always done that. I've always written my own stuff. I've always been interested in digital marketing, social media, and like just putting little things out and testing what works. So I've been online the whole time. But what it did for me the last couple of years is really dial in creating content that's not salesy. It's actually valuable content. And then just leaving it up to the person on the other end, to make a decision about whether they get in touch or not.
Sure.
Because I fell into the trap when I first started, like when I owned the gym, and there was that kind of coaching, like making content because I wanted to get someone to come to me rather than putting the value out there.
Yeah.
So now it's just like, I just share stuff that's real for me now. And if you don't like it, bad luck. That's fine. It's bad luck in terms of we're not going to connect.
Yeah.
So, and that's okay. You got to connect with the coach or the healer or the guy or girl that you need to find, because we don't have to connect. You need to find the right person for you for your journey.
And how are you finding your pool of clients now that you are being a lot less salesy, a lot less call to action compared to when you were just trying to get sales in?
So much easier.
Yeah.
And much more comfortable. And all of the sessions, I just feel like I'm having a chat with mates. I don't feel like I'm coaching. And I don't feel like I have to coach. I don't feel like there's some process that I have to go because I've got the coach's hat on and you're the coaching client. And because I'm the coach, I need to know more than you. And you have to listen. It's none of that, right? That all just gets thrown aside now, because you came in knowing that this is my bag. This is how I do stuff. And I do my coaching sessions and my healing sessions in the lounge room in my house. I used to have a clinic set up, a room, coaching clients, therapy clients would come into that. And it just always felt a little bit not me, like really kind of inauthentic. Now everyone comes in, sits on my couch, I'm like, do you want a coffee? Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a drink of water? Do you want some coconut water? What do you want? And I'll make you something and we can have a chat. And they're like, this is the most comfortable place I've been for any of these conversations. Perfect. That's what I'm aiming for.
Fantastic.
So so it makes it easier for me, and then they pick up more. It's good all around.
Yeah. And as a guy, moving into that, you obviously got a very relaxed style of coaching, but you have a lot of different tools, a lot of different, what's the word? It's not arrows in your quiver. Tricks in your, what do they say?
We'll take that one.
A lot of strings on your bow. You have a lot of strings to your bow, I believe is the sentence. And we went through some before, NLP, hypno, Chinese traditional medicine, a lot of different styles of healing and therapy in there. Do you take on a client and then say, okay, this is what you're going to need? Or do you kind of take a session as it goes and think, okay, now might be the moment where we implement some Chinese traditional healing?
It's what I've discovered, and this is like in the last 3 months really, is that I have to stop thinking. It sounds ridiculous, right? But I have to stop thinking. I have to start listening more. And I only came to this when I let go of the role of coach, healer, hypnotherapist, NLP, something or other.
Yep.
I'm in a room with someone who wants to shift. So ostensibly what I first need to understand is, where are you right now? And give me a general idea of where you want to go. And then we can work out what the gap is. And we can talk about a path from here to there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's still a lot of my, not advertising, but a lot of the content that's online still says hypnosis or hypnotherapy. So I always get people saying, I want to quit smoking.
Right.
Which is fine. It's like, that's the doorway. They want to shift something. That's my work. I'll help you with the shift. But the last person who came in, we spent 2 hours and we didn't even talk about smoking. Well, the smoking's the small thing. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Smoking will take care of itself.
Yeah.
It's the low-hanging fruit. But do you want to quit smoking and then find out something else replaces it because you haven't dealt with the other stuff that's going on in your life? And if I was not open to that being a possibility, and I just said, okay, I'm a hypnotherapist, and you came in to quit smoking, and I did the whole 45 to 90 minutes of hypnosis for smoking cessation, then a huge opportunity has been missed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably, I'd imagine it's a big selling what they want, give them what they need kind of thing with your coaching, in that what you actually do and what you and a lot of, I'm not going to call you a spiritual coach. I don't think you fall into a bucket particularly, but a lot of coaches, they deliver a result that is so much bigger than the client is after, because no one really knows what they don't know, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Yeah, and so for me, it's like I don't really work with people that are just starting the journey.
Okay.
I'm really working with people that have done some personal development work, self-care work, whatever you want to call it, and they've gotten to a point and they're like, all right, there's something more than this, but I just don't know which way to go.
Sure.
So I'm kind of playing in that little area, which is, it's exactly where I want to play. Like, when you're ready to jump out of the plane, we'll throw the parachute on the way down. Because there's no path, there's no defined way, and that's one of the things that rubs me the wrong way with some coaches, not all coaches, is this like idea that there's a process, and if you follow my process, the process that worked for me, and I used to live in a cardboard box on the side of the street, $4 million in debt, and in 3 days, I just started believing in myself, and this is a process I followed, and you can too. No. I don't know what you're going through. Let's work it out together. So,
super interesting, because I do so much in the marketing world in, helping people create that signature process, which you've just torn down. And you're very, very, you're correct though, in, a huge sense, in that in the realm you're working in, no one process will help anyone.
Exactly. The horses for courses, right? And I'm not saying processes suck. I'm saying it's the process works where the process works. But if you come to me and you've done process after process after process, and the reason you come to someone like me is that's not working, then me giving you another process is ridiculous. So like, we're doing the whole do the same thing, expect a different result.
Yeah, well, it sounds like those people who kind of have, well, I used to be in health coaching, used to own a gym.
Yeah.
People come in, I've done keto, I've cut out carbs, I've done isogenics, I've done all these things, and it's always something they've done, right? It's always a system they've done.
Tried it.
And then when they're at that point and none of these processes have worked for them, clearly it's something a lot deeper.
Yes. Yeah. And the really interesting thing is, again, it's never the process. Like, I'll get vast majority of the people come in, they're just overwhelmed with their cognition. They're trying to work it out so hard that they just spin themselves up in circles mentally. And they've forgotten how to calm down, like to find that natural state of calm where you get out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system, and you can get out of fight, flight, freeze and just have a moment of clarity. And there's this expectation it's going to be difficult. And it doesn't have to be difficult, but if you tell yourself it's difficult, then you keep looking for the secret sauce. Like I've had guys that come in and I'm just like, dude, can you just sit and breathe? And they're like, I'm just trust me, breathe. And then they sit and they're like there for 2 minutes and like, holy shit, I feel better. Like, when was the last time you just sat and did nothing? I don't do that. I always got to go, Oh, that's what's happening. So sometimes it's, for me, I feel like it's anti-coaching. Like I'm kicking against a lot of the ideas that are out in, like the internet world about how you got to do more and you got to push and you got to and you got to more abundance, which is all wonderful stuff. But again, it's wonderful stuff maybe here and not here where my people are.
Yeah. Got it. There's seasons, right? There's seasons to go fast and to slow down.
Exactly. And so I'm 45 and I attract a lot of people in and around my age, sort of late 30s into their 40s. Mm-hmm. And they've done all their stuff that they're supposed to have done. And they're like, meh, still feel a bit empty. So it's not business coaching anymore because they know how to run a business. It's not financial coaching anymore because they've already got 2 houses and zeros in the bank. But, they've got the wife and the 2 kids, but they're not sure if they're happy. All right, so we've got to work on you. Or the stuff, the place you haven't been working because you've been doing all the external stuff. Let's start doing the internal stuff.
Yeah, far out. It's tough to sell internal work to someone who doesn't know they need it, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah. And so this is how I fell out of business coaching.
Yeah.
Because I had a bunch of business coaching clients. I used to do the higher ticket prices, 12-month contracts, get 6 to 9 months in, and people would work out that the work wasn't the business. And you start peeling back the layers, and then people would go, that's where the work is. And they'd freeze.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but like that was a fairly common story.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into therapy, because I'm like, the work's here in between these 2 things.
Yeah.
Right between the ears. You don't need a new sales and marketing process. You're already doing it all. Your website's dead sexy. Like, your message, your audience, you're making enough money.
Yeah.
But you're not happy. What the hell does that mean? All right, well, we've got to dig. Don't want to dig. So yeah, it is fun.
Digging's uncomfortable, man.
Yeah. So that's why I say I can't, at the moment, as much as I enjoy opening the door for people to do the work, that's kind of the really early, like if I've got a process, because I think we'd probably be very similar, that we've studied every kind of funnel known to man, right? And then you get to a point where you do them by accident.
Yeah.
You put a piece of content out there and then stuff comes off it.
Yeah.
And then you just nurture relationships. And then there was a book 50 years ago that told you that's exactly what it was all about. But you're like, no. I need the newest funnel.
Yeah.
And what shade of orange is my button? And all that kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Well, so you've obviously got a very, you obviously have a very unique experience in that you've done tangible business coaching, marketing, numbers, and now you're doing this other side, internal work. And so you've got these words that I've seen you use a lot in your socials, like gratitude and mindfulness and purpose. And these are some of the big buzzwords in the coaching space. And I dare say words that are very overused by young coaches who fail to deliver on these concepts. I want to know, as a guy who's come from many years of experience across the whole coaching space, how do you go about turning things like gratitude and mindfulness, intangible things, into tangible results?
That's a sick question.
Thank you.
And sometimes I don't know that people will even make the connection, because we're starting to get into the world of feeling. We're not getting into the world of, we're no longer really in the world of thinking. So I was talking before about men, especially, who get to that point where they've achieved everything that they were told when they were 14, that this is what a man should have by the time they're 35, 45, whatever. And they get all that kind of stuff and go, nah, still don't feel fulfilled. So we're no longer in thinking logical world anymore. We're in How can you feel better about what you've got? So then it might be something as simple as reconnecting with your relationship with your significant other, spending 5 minutes with your daughter, just going outside and taking a breath, like really things that sound really innocuous, creating containers in the day for self-care where you start to become aware again of the stuff that you enjoy about your life. Because all the stuff, like for a lot of these guys, the success stays there. It doesn't go away. And even if they close one business chapter, they've got the skills to go and open up another business straight away. And quite often they've got the money in the bank to go and buy another business and turn it around and either, put a pretty bow on it and sell it, or have some income come from it. But if they don't really watch themselves, they get stuck in the same loop where they work 80 hours and forget that they've got a family. And then 3 years later, they're like, I'm still not fulfilled, because they just do the same process again and again. So when it comes to gratitude, it's like what I'm aiming for people to do with gratitude, and you're right, it is overused. It's more of an awareness of what you got rather than this continual focus on what I want. And the difficulty can be, no matter how much you obtain, you can still, if you allow yourself, have this feeling that I don't have enough or I should have more. But if you can just recognize all of the stuff that's lined up that you've got, then you sit in a more comfortable space. And I think that's where the balance, it's almost like that emotional thermostat gets reset and you're not doing these ones anymore. You don't feel bipolar, you sort of ebbing and flowing, but with less modulation. And so that's what I'm aiming for. And, when it comes to mindfulness, again, oh my Lord, that's just been murdered, that term, hasn't it? So when I talk about mindfulness, I use the word because people have an understanding of what it is. It's like using the term coach. I don't necessarily like the term coach. It's like you would have probably had this one when you're in the gym. I didn't want to call myself a personal trainer because there were so many bad personal trainers. But if I called myself a strength and conditioning coach or a fitness, people didn't even know what that meant. So I have to call myself a personal trainer to get the conversation started. So I use the word mindfulness, and really all I'm saying is become a bit more sensitive, become a bit more aware of what's going on for you, and then do something rather than running these habits and patterns. Become aware of what you're doing and how altering something can change your outcomes. And therefore they don't need my process. They just need practice. So they can stay with me for a little bit. They can stay with me for a while. Some dudes do like 1-2 hour session and it's enough and their head goes bloop and they're off and racing, and they'll come back later when they're ready. And that's all cool by me, because I just, the people that I've worked with that I've done the old fashioned sell into because you'll help better if they're sold into something, very rarely has worked for me. Even if they've gotten what they want, there's just that little in the background that maybe I got talked into something that I didn't want. And that's all right. Each to their own.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very relevant experience for me. When I was health coaching, and I studied how to close deals rather than how to deliver results. And I would get people so hyped and emotional on the phone that they could not help but say yes to me. And I would just be stacking numbers. And then a few weeks later, I'd just see them drop off. Payments would drop off, refunds coming in, because even though I was doing my best with these people, some people just not right for it.
Yeah.
So what's your, do you ever say no to people who want to work with you at the moment?
No.
Yeah. What's the kind of thing that would make you disqualify a client for your coaching?
I'm practicing something that's new for me. I'm going on gut feel at the moment. So the process is always going through these 2-hour healing sessions at the start. And I use the term healing because I don't know what to call it. And where I live locally, there's a the community is fairly open to this kind of terminology. If I was in Melbourne, where I was like 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't use the term. It'd feel a little weird because it wouldn't sit with the populace.
Sure.
But it works here. Like we've got way out there alternative, crazy, cuckoo stuff that I don't understand. And then we've got really scientific stuff, and I kind of have a foot in both. Some people think I'm crazy because I'm talking like, okay, let's just do some breath work. Oh, what the hell's breath work?
Yeah.
Well, we're just going to focus on your breath, and you might astral travel. And they're like, what are you talking about, man? Like, let's just see where it goes. It's just a doorway.
Yeah.
So I've found that what's happening now for me is the message that I'm putting out is so authentic that I'm pre-qualifying really early.
Okay.
Don't think I'm getting many people call me up that aren't somewhat interested. And the ones that do are the ones that call up and go, thanks very much, I'll get back to you. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to push you, because I know if I do the, hey, why not now kind of thing, that they might come in for that first session. And what if that puts them off coaching completely? Or if it puts them off the process or the practice completely because they weren't really ready? And it's not necessarily about me, but what I did, which was a disservice to them, was I made them take the step that they're not yet ready to take. Have you heard of Ram Dass?
No.
Okay, this is going to blow your mind, right? So Ram Dass he passed away a couple of years ago. He's a spiritual leader, effectively.
Okay.
A guru in India. He was also the guy that with Timothy Leary did all of the LSD experiments in Harvard and then got kicked out of Harvard. So he went through this path of, I don't have enough in my life, did a truckload of LSD.
Yep.
And then worked out that he could keep getting high and meeting God, but kept coming back to earth again. He's like, this isn't right. So he went to India and found his guru and, just kind of did that really ethereal kind of thing. And I've been listening to his podcasts lately. It's really interesting because he used to be a psychotherapist and then he found psychedelics and then he went spiritual, but he was still doing kind of therapeutic work with people, which is kind of like coaching. It's kind of like life coaching before it's life coaching. And he references this line out of the Bhagavad Gita, which is, you shouldn't ever force people to walk through the doorway unless they're ready to walk through the doorway. So, and that's, of course, talking more from the spiritual thing. So don't point to God for people if they're not ready to meet God. And then you can bring that back to sort of the human plane. Don't point out the path to success if they're not ready for the path to success, whatever that is. So, I really honor that now with my work. If I get the sense that someone's not ready, I don't push. If I get the sense that they are ready, but they're getting in their own way, then there's work to be done. And we can navigate that. So we look, well, like, what's the block? So, they kind of qualify themselves. But if I get someone who comes in and they just sit with me and don't share anything, don't come back. If you want to come back, then here are the prerequisites for you to come back. You need to open up.
Yeah.
And because if you can't, then we can't do it.
Yeah. So do you, coming off that, think it's important for coaches to set expectations of their clients in order to get better results?
Yeah. And you know what? I think it works in all directions. The clients need to have expectations of themselves. They need to clearly communicate with the coach what their expectations of the coach and of the relationship are. And then the coach needs to do the same. What does the coach expect of him or herself? What does the coach expect of the client? And what's a reasonable expectation for the journey forward? When you take all of the bullshit out of it, where you're trying to sell someone the moon, what's realistically possible and in what time frame? And it's like under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
People still get that backwards.
Yeah.
Now, like, I can create you a 7-figure business in 3 months. It's possible, sure, but you've got to line everything up. There's not a lot of space for stuff to go wrong in that. And the big thing again is just going to be self-limiting beliefs and things like that, falling into comfortable habits of behavior and patterns. And sometimes they don't move in 3 months. You can have all of the processes, the best funnels, the best product, everything dialed in, and then just not be able to do it.
Yeah, man. I have got a couple of phenomenal testimonials for my marketing company, but I don't use them because they're so unrelatable to so many people. And so we're talking about, people who have just banked 7 figures, classic marketing speak. And when I used them, the people that came in had these crazy over the top expectations that were not realistic, and didn't know that the guy who was actually created those testimonials was spending, $1,500 of his own money every day on ads, and, had a sales team he was training relentlessly all the time, that sort of thing. And so I try and go for more relatable testimonials, for one thing, to manage people's expectations. And secondly, like you said, coaches need to give clients expectations, and also help to manage their clients' expectations as well of what's possible, because there's so many variables in someone's life, and no process works for everyone. Bring it back to that one. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, my head went somewhere when you were saying that, just how confusing it can get sometimes for both parties.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so much, especially at the start, right? There's so much to do.
Yeah.
So the process, if there is a process, is, I find that as the person who's guiding, is just to hold it all back a little bit. And not because I want you to be here for 3 to 6 months, because if I give it all to you now, you're going to be worse off.
Yeah.
Because you're already overwhelmed, and then I'm adding stuff on top. So, all right, let's just simplify it and take the complexity out of it. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, I remember when I was business coaching, I was, can you tell me what your day's like? And people would be like, well, I do 5 minutes of this and I do this. And I'm like, you've done like 20 things and it's not even 11:30. Can you do customer service for 4 hours in a row?
Yeah.
And that's it. Do nothing else. But what about the rest of it? I'm like, we'll find a container for that later.
Yeah.
Like, and then your brain can relax a little bit, because you can stay in the space. Get rid of the complexity.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about busy business people, because this podcast is intended for coaches, but just people who are just having a go at building that business.
Yeah.
And you've had a couple of traditional businesses. You've had your marketing agency, Touchstone, and you had your gym, and now you're coaching. You're a dad. You're busy. Everyone's
busy.
Everyone's busy. How are you, mate? Oh, busy. So in your experience of both worlds, right? Small business owners with their hands full, what do you see as, 1 or 2 non-negotiable and realistic daily practices we can take on to make sure we're, running on a full tank?
So good. Well, we can fall into that. We could go a couple of different ways. We can go into self-care, which can be the real basics, like make sure you get enough sleep and eat well, right? That no one talks about that stuff when it comes to work. But where are you going to get the energy from if you haven't slept well? So create boundaries. Like, I'm going to bed at this time and I'm waking up at this time. And, like, I'm going to have a baseball bat under the bed. And if you disturb me, then there's going to be trouble. Like, you got to put yourself first with that stuff. So I would say that's number one. People miss it. Like, they live on coffee. I just smacked down my 14th espresso for the day.
Yeah.
Been there, done that when I was in IT. Just didn't. One day we worked out that the worst thing that the company that I was working for at the time did was they put in one of those newfangled espresso machines in the tea room. So we were just, instead of going to the water fountain, we were going for an espresso.
Yeah.
Just high as a kite and caffeine. And then your adrenals go and you whop, you're sick for what, 2 weeks. So what's the point? And then the other thing is simplifying. You just simplify your day. Simplify what you do. And what I used to do with people when it was really business coaching was, what do you enjoy doing? Number one, which I think we often put at the end. We're often like, what are the activities that you get the greatest return on investment from? What are the activities that you should be doing as a business owner? What are the ones you shouldn't be doing that you can outsource? And I think most of us have a fairly clear idea of that. Like, I'm shit with numbers. So I've got an accountant. Do my numbers, like in terms of tax numbers. I've got no idea about tax law. I don't want to know. I want to pay as little tax as possible. Go sort that out for me and then send me your bill. And just black box. Just that goes over there. And then some people not good at marketing. Pay someone to do your marketing. And of course, you've got to do your budgeting and all that kind of stuff. But what do you enjoy? I remember when I was at the gym, I had business partners. I did all the marketing. So my job, I had two jobs: get the people in, and then I would do my fun work, which was go and coach people, get out on the floor and make people have an amazing experience and get fitter and happier and healthier. But I knew that's what I wanted to do. I had to do the marketing to get to that point. So know what you enjoy.
That's important.
Yeah. And I think we miss it, because how much time do we spend, especially people who are busy creating something, like they're driven to spend an obscene number of hours building something that's important to them. So you're going to spend all of that time over however many years doing stuff you don't want to do. Doesn't make any sense. So work out. Yeah, there's going to be some stuff that sucks, but do the stuff you like and do more of that.
Man, it's funny because I can see where you're at now. And by the way, I am drinking water out of this cup. It's a coffee cup, but I drink water.
This isn't vodka. This is water too.
I drink water out of my mug. So usually I've got this big horrible bottle that just looks gross when I drink out of it on screen. So you're talking about, business owners just, they grind, they spend all their hours, right? I know that your attitude on this has evolved, because if you go back to your Facebook 6 years ago, your profile picture just says the word hustle in capital letters. Yep. Take more action, right? So I was going to ask you earlier on, what's more important in business, hustle or flow? But I can see where your head's at with that one. But
yeah, see, now it's flow, and you're absolutely right. And I'm happy to be completely honest about that. 5-10 years ago, it was just push. But I just worked out it didn't help for me. It didn't help. Now this is not a prescription for anyone. Some people, the hustle is the thing they love. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you work out that's what you love, then go the hustle.
Yeah.
Like, you look at someone, like, people talk about Elon Musk all the time. Dude can't stop. Like, most people who create PayPal and sell it and be like, done.
Yeah.
Get me some pina coladas. I'm off to the Caribbean, right? But he can't stop.
Yeah. Because
he knows that's what he's interested in, that thing. Like Gary Vee all the time. You watch this guy, he's got all this energy. It's oozing off him. He's driven because he wants to buy the jets. Yeah. That's his thing. Like, I moved from Melbourne to Noosa to be near the beach and chill out. Yeah. Yeah. I left the hustle back in Melbourne, which is pretty much 6 years ago. So there you go. You've got it like right on the right time.
So question then, Adam. If you hadn't hustled, do you think you would be able to flow as much now?
Probably not, because I needed to learn the lesson.
Right.
And back then, if someone had said, dude, just chill out and flow with it and it'll come, I would have been like, come on. Everything I read tells me I've got to push. Everything I learned when I was a kid, push, do more. So I almost had to prove that didn't work for me. And I did have some success out of it, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But it just got to the point where I'm like, hey, I've built stuff like this before. I didn't have as much joy in doing that. And, like, my kids are now 11 and 13. So they're taking up a bit more time. They're starting to discover themselves. I value my time with my wife more now. Right? I value time in nature more now. Like, I'll have moments between clients. I won't get on Facebook and write a post. I'll go for a walk down the beach. Right. And it's amazing. I'll meet someone like, dude, I've been thinking about calling you. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm just out chilling out. Yeah. So bang, 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 bang. Stuff's just, it's almost like allowing it rather than forcing it. Yeah. All that shit I read about when I was studying martial arts and Chinese philosophy when I was early 20s, starting to make sense now, because it's not about intellectual understanding. It's about the application and the experiential understanding. Be like water, right? Yeah, Bruce Lee. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me, but there's a whole library of Bruce Lee stuff on this shelf here. Oh, is there really? Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. It's a constant conversation in, I think, especially the coaching industry, where there's such a dichotomy between private jet Instagram hustlers and then people floating in Bali. And I think that hustle versus flow, I think there's seasons for both. I think there's times to sow and times to reap. And I think that
you can't flow from day one because you got to learn some shit, and you can't hustle for the whole time either. So I think if I hadn't learned to sell and cold call and get rejected and hustle and stay up late, finishing a funnel, that kind of thing, I wouldn't have the life now that I have, where I've spent most of the day, to be honest, with my daughters today, which has been rock and roll, and the business keeps going, you know. So I'm in a bit of a flow now. I think I needed the hustle to get there, but I don't think hustle is where I want to go back to.
Yeah, I feel you, man. That's exactly that's my thing. I had to get out. Like, I could just feel myself burning out in Melbourne. Like, what was going on around me was perpetuating the same lifestyle for myself. And it wasn't wrong. It wasn't bad. I have no judgment about it, but it wasn't for me.
Yes.
You know, and the coaches out there that are selling the hustle, as long as they're attracting the people that the hustle is working for, like, more power to them. Like, that's the doorway that person needs to step through. Go hard, young man. You know, that's perfect.
Yeah. We've both got hustle mates, right? We've both got the mates who hustle and love the hustle. And yeah, man, I love the hustle. But then my daughters came along, the hustle was no longer available. So then I had to figure out how to flow. And so I've been forced into a flow, and I'm a much happier man for it. Yeah. But speaking of, Adam, speaking of, bro, I've taken up 50 minutes of your time, and
went fast, hey.
We're in flow. We're in flow, man. We didn't have to hustle out a conversation. That was easy stuff. And I'm really glad that you're able to get back into live coaching again, man. I'm really glad that you get to do your retreats. One coming up in March, I believe.
Yeah, first weekend in March, man. I can't wait for that. It's on this beautiful property that a mate of mine owns in the hinterland.
So good.
Just acres and acres up and down, dam, river. You know, like, and some guys will get out there that haven't been out in the land for a long time. And they're just like the retreat might do nothing more than give them space. Perfect.
How good's that? Is your mate Pete Evans? Is it?
No, he's a bit further south, I think. I don't think he's in Queensland. I think he's like northern New South Wales.
He's Byron Bay hinterland.
Yeah.
He runs
a good part of the world too. Holy moly.
That's the dream for us. My wife and I, we're at the beach now. The dream is to get to a farm somewhere.
Oh, man, my wife was telling me about Matt Corby just buying a property in the hinterland just out of Byron Bay.
The singer?
I'm like, that's perfect. Like, that's where Matt Corby needs to live, in the hinterland in Byron Bay. Just make music.
What a winner, man. Keep your penthouses. Give me a farm full of chickens.
Yeah, absolutely. Know yourself. You've got to know yourself.
Dude, you definitely are a man who knows himself, and I really appreciate that. I hope to be, as happy and well endowed with a beautiful beard as you are in a few years' time. And you're an absolute silver fox, bro, and keep rocking. Keep rocking out whatever you're doing, man, because it's working for you.
Cheers, Alex. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for being here on the podcast today, Adam. Everyone else who's listening or streaming live, it's been a pleasure. We'll get the audio fixed for next time, but I'll be back actually tomorrow with another episode of Coaches to the Moon. So for everyone listening, much love. See you later.